Hello and welcome. Today we're working on how to do a dashboard in Excel. Now the way I'm going to do the dashboard, I'm going to show you, I'm going to use pivot charts from pivot tables and then slicers. So here we see this is the final look of the dashboard. So we have things like bar charts and column charts and more bar charts and then a pie chart. And over here, these buttons are called slicers. And you can see that if we change these, if we select these buttons, then what happens is all the charts get updated. So we can do it by the type of bean, or we have mean altitude, and we have different processing methods. So we have a coffee dashboard based on actual coffee data. So let's investigate and let's get started. I'm using a coffee database, which is the coffee quality database from the Coffee Quality Institute. And here I'll put the link in the description below. And so our goal is we're going to analyze coffee quality with a sample of about 1,300 taste tests, and we want to create that dashboard that we saw. Now the first thing we needed to do is let's clean our data. So here we just downloaded it, and I haven't done anything with this, and let's see what we have. At the very beginning we probably want to put number, and we probably shouldn't start with a 0, so let's do 1 and then 2 and 3, and then once we have that we can copy that sequence all the way down. So how many taste tests do we have? We have 1339, so 1,339. Now we have at the very top, we have the species, which is Arabica or Robusta, and then we have all sorts of things, owner, country, so on. So some of these, let me widen this a little bit. Country, period, of, period, origin. Let's just call this country. So a few little things like that might be helpful. And if we get all the way in the middle here, we have something that's called altitude. In fact, let me put, one of the things we want to do when we were doing, we're going to end up with pivot tables and pivot charts. We need to have the very top row, it needs to be the label name or the field name, because we'll see how that works later on. Now some of these aren't going to be helpful, but let's get over to where we think it might be helpful. So we have the processing method. So I'm just going to call this processing. So the processing, because shorter titles would be maybe better here. Now we have the variety, we have the owner. We can do several things, and we're going to kind of have to pick and choose things that are useful. Now the date is probably not going to be very useful for us for our purposes, but the processing method will be. So let's think about what we're trying to do is come up with, we're trying to buy coffee. Let's say that we have a company and maybe we think we might want to add a coffee shop, or we want to buy coffee, for example, maybe for customers or employees, and we want to find a good country and a good type of coffee to purchase. And so we'll look at a data set and we'll look at a dashboard based on that. So I think these are the ones we're going to look at. We're going to look at these here in the middle, different features of the taste test: the aroma, the flavor, the aftertaste, the acidity, the body, the balance, uniformity. Now, when we get to uniformity, clean cup, and sweetness, clean cup is a factor. But you see, these three have a lot of 10s. It's probably not going to be that very distinctive. Now, we also have the person that is rating it, can give it some points. So these are cupper points. And then we have, at the very end, we have total cup points. And so I'm going to call this, just without the periods, total cup points is fine. But you'll see if we add up, I think aroma is the very first one we have. Let's see here, yes, aroma. If we add up the aroma all the way through the cupper points, you see that equals 90.58, and that's the sum. So that cup points is just the sum of these 10. There's 10 factors. Now, we can sort and we can summarize based on all the other factors except probably uniformity, clean cup, and sweetness. So I would mark these out. We probably don't want to do it based on that, but you might want to look at, and just a little FYI, I think the lowest scores total are on the aftertaste. And so one thing that I did is worked with aftertaste. I'm going to show you how to do it. If you think, okay, this is the one I'm going to look at, I'm going to do aftertaste and work in that direction. Now, we need to do a couple of cleaning up. We changed the number. We need to look at mean altitude. And so mean altitude over here, if we put, and we have some things that are not going to matter, like certification body could matter, but like certification address, that looks like a blockchain type of information. And then the certification contact, once again, a blockchain kind of thing. We don't need that. We have meters of height. And so there's a meters, let me do this, widen it here a little bit. There is a meters function, a column in the middle, and it would say like 1950 to 2200. We can't really do things with that. So what we need is, we need discrete numbers for the meters, altitude, that's the low, and then the high. And I'm going to pick mean meters here. So this is the altitude, altitude mean. So I'm going to call it altitude mean, or I guess I could call it mean altitude, right? All right, so mean altitude. Now, if we select this, and let's look at the data just for a little bit, the data, and then the filter, and then we're going to sort on the mean altitude descending, and what we see is a couple of them are not going to be correct, and we don't have to fool with the high and the low, but let's just do it all together. There's just no way it's 190,000 meters. That's not correct. So if we go over here and we look, then I think that the meters are something like, and I think I saw it somewhere, the meters are like 1901.64. All right, so let's edit this. This should be 1901.64. We don't lose any data, but let's just do it this way, and we can copy all this. We know that's 1,900 meters, not 190,000 meters. Same thing here. If we go back and look, this is 1,100, and they put in some extra zeros, so this is 1,100 meters, not 110,000, and so we'll enter that. All right, another thing we have, I noticed when we looked at this data set, is our country. So if we look at our countries here, Tanzania, I think, had, yes, here's the problem. Tanzania has comma, the United Republic of. So let's go back and just select those. And if we had a chart, it's going to be too long to put Tanzania, comma, United Republic of. So let's do this. Let's copy this. Tanzania, United Republic of, copy. And if we go here to our replace, so anytime it has in this database, we're going to replace it with just Tanzania. So let's replace all, and there's 40 times we had the Republic of Tanzania. So let's just call it Tanzania. And we have the same thing going on with Hawaii and Puerto Rico. Because it's United States, we might want to adjust it just for Hawaii. I know Hawaii is a big coffee producer, but we have United States, and then we have United States Hawaii. So let's just change that United States Hawaii to just Hawaii. All right, so we need to do the same thing. I'm going to copy up here, copy, and then I'll go back and replace them all. Replace this with just Hawaii, and I know that's not a country, but that's going to be good enough probably for our purposes. So replace all and 73. So Hawaii is a big producer. We want to make sure we don't lose that information. We don't want to group it maybe total with the United States. We know that it's a different state, of course. All right, so we'll get rid of that filter. We can do the same thing for Puerto Rico, but I think it's not a very big sample set. Let's see what else we need to do. We did the mean altitude, we did the number, we did Tanzania, Hawaii, and Puerto Rico. All right, so we're ready. So now I've kind of cleaned this data, so I'm going to call this just the coffee data set rather than the original, and I'm happy with this. So let's go back. Doesn't really matter what order it's in, but I just put it back in the original order we had it 1 through 1339. So here's what I want to do. Let's go back and look at, the first thing I did was aftertaste by country. I thought that sounded good, so let's try that. Let's try to achieve what we can do here. So if we go to the Insert tab, we're going to insert a pivot table, but we can go all the way across in a pivot chart. A pivot chart is built on a pivot table, so let's do a pivot chart. And let's do we know the range is A1 through AR 1340. That gets everything. And on a new worksheet, we'll hit OK. So now we have sheet 1, and we want to do, I picked aftertaste. You can pick whatever that you want to do with this. So you can do the total cut points, you can do the cupper rating, you can do aroma, balance, so on. All those things that are important. Aroma, flavor, aftertaste, acidity, all those had a meaningful score. When it got down to the last 3, like uniformity, clean cup, sweetness, I think not really going to be very interesting. So let's do aftertaste. Okay, it's going to put some here of aftertaste. And we might want to do the aftertaste as an average, okay, because it scores, I think, 1 through 10. So 10 would be the highest. So here we have 7.4. And we want to do it, I did it by country. So you remember it said country of origin or whatever, but I changed it to country. Well, that's why we changed it, so it just says country. So now we have every country listed in our sample set, and we've got the average. Now the average is a lot of decimal places, so let's right-click the label there. We can do number, two decimals, and we'll hit OK. So everything is now the average aftertaste by country. Higher is better. 7.4 is the average. Anything above that would be above average, and so on. And it lists, I'm going to get rid of the grid line, so I'm going to put view and then grid line, so it's all simple here. And then I'm going to make this bigger so we can see this. So that is a column. It just kind of went with the column for us. So let's do it. This is not a manageable list. Maybe let's do a top 10. So we get to the top here. We're going to right click and we'll say we're going to do the bottom, and we'll do it by average of aftertaste, and it's descending. We want the largest ones first. So let's stop there. So Ethiopia is number 1, then the United States. Apparently the United States not counting Hawaii, right? Hawaii would be its own category. Puerto Rico is its own category. And we'll click on that again, and we're going to choose by value maybe a top 10. And maybe we want to do maybe a top 8 or a top 7. It might make it a little bit easier. So I'm going to do the top 8, and we'll go here. So what it happens is it changes the pivot table, which changes the pivot chart. All right, so let's do this. Let's work on the pivot table, chart rather, here. Let's add data labels. So that's 7.89. We can make that a little bit bigger. We can make that a little bigger. We can get rid of the legend on the left. We can get rid of all the lines in the middle. We can make this a little bit larger, but this data might be better as instead of a column, might be better as a bar. So we're going to change the type to a bar, and it starts with the smallest to the largest here. And we can do two things. If we want to go the largest, we can make this a little bit larger names. We could bold if we wanted to. We could bold over here. So what we have here is the top, I think should be 8. I think that's what we selected. The top 8 countries by the high score of aftertaste. Now remember, aftertaste I picked because it had the lowest overall score. So if we pick the better coffee with better aftertaste qualities, which I probably, is good aftertaste qualities rather than bad aftertaste qualities, then here's what we would have. Now we can sort this by average of aftertaste ascending, and then we'll have the largest number at the top by Ethiopia and so on. The other thing we can do, we can click on the chart here, and then we can do the gap width. Let's do a gap width of say 60, and it'll make the bars a little bit wider. Now blue is fine, we can change the colors, we can alternate colors. So let's keep going here. We can do the color, the fill, and the border. We can take out the line, but we can do the varied colors by point, so each country has its own special color. And we don't need this legend here because we have the legend here on the left. Now we would call this, we would say this is aftertaste by country. And we might want to make this bold and bigger and make it easy to understand. All right, so aftertaste by country. The last thing I think I would do is get rid of the border on that. So you can see there's no border, it's just a chart. All right, now once you have this, I would copy and paste over. So let's call this tab. Let's call this tab aftertaste by country. And it's already formatted, ready to go. And so let's do right click, move or copy, move to the end, create a copy. Okay, so we've got another one exactly like this. But let's look at what we have over here. We have aftertaste by mean altitude. Now, mean altitude, let's look at our coffee dashboard that I created. And what we see is by altitude, you can do it by every 1,000 meters. Then you have an aftertaste score, whatever, and some are better, whatever. So we've created this first one, and we can create other ones. We can do it by mean altitude, we can do it by processing method or whatever. So let's do the next one. Doesn't matter which one we do next, but let's go back to our pivot table field. If you don't have this, you go up to the top, go to pivot table analyze, and go to a field list, and there you'll get the pivot table field. Now I'm going to take out the country and put in the processing method. Now I just called it processing, I believe. And it puts it to the left, to the right, we want it to the left. So we'll take out country. And so we have a very similar thing by country. Now we have it by the processing. And what we can do is we have the average, and we can still sort for that. The average, sort by the average, descending. And so that way we see which one's the highest one. If you want to reverse this, you can go back and reverse this. So you can put the largest to the smallest. So here's what we can do is we can say ascending, and it puts the smallest to the largest, and this then would be the pulped, natural, or honey processing is the highest. And if we don't have one, that has ranked pretty high. And then semi-washed, semi-pulped, things like that. So that's another method. And we might want to, on this one, we might want to change the colors. So we change the colors to a blue. So a solid fill all the way blue. Okay? So now we have aftertaste by country, and this is aftertaste by processing method. So we can call this aftertaste by processing method. Aftertaste by processing. All right, let's do one more and you'll get the hang of it. You need to do 5 to make a good looking dashboard, and you can do it by columns or rows or whatever. By the way, this one we could do, certainly do by columns. You could change the chart type to a column, and it still works. Okay, so this would be the aftertaste by processing method. We now have the first one, which is a bar chart. The second one is a column chart. All right, let's do a third one, and then we'll kind of put together a dashboard for us. So let's go back and look, pick one we're going to do. We can do it by country, how many processors there are in a country, or the top 5 coffee producers. So here, let's do this. We're going to do the country, and we'll do the count of how many we have, not a sum or not an average. So we want to know what are our big countries where we might get our coffee from. All right, so we're going to right click on this, move or copy, and we're going to move to the end, create a copy. Okay. Now, so what we have is, let's go back to our pivot chart. We can click on it. We don't want to do that. Let's click on the chart. Yes, so it has processing. So we want to do, let's do take out processing and put in, we're going to do the country. So we want to put in countries again. So country. All right, countries. And we want to do a number count. So let's just do a count of all the numbers that we have. And so instead of a sum, let's do the count. In other words, how many do we have that are Brazil, and how many are Guatemala, how many are Ethiopia, and on and on and on. So we can right click, we can do by country descending. And here's all the ones that we have. Well, we need to do it by, count of number descending. Yes. So what we had was, that would be alphabetized earlier. And here we have all the different countries, and this is not going to be helpful. So let's do by value. Let's do maybe a top 10, and let's do maybe a top, let's do a top 6. So then we'll see, here's the 6 largest producers by method here. We can add data labels, right? And then we can make this, we can do a column chart, we can make it a bar chart. We could do this even as a pie chart. And so there you see, hey, these are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right? And then we could add a data label here. So let's see if we can add data labels. We might want to put a category name. So this is country here. We can make it maybe a little bigger. And here, sometimes we might not be able to see this one. You can put in the value if you want to. You don't have to put a value. You could put, just how the largest coffee producers here by whatever method we pick. So let's do count of, let's say the largest, let's call it the largest producers, or the largest coffee countries. How about that? So any particular method we'd have, here would be the largest coffee countries here. Okay, so that's readable. All right, so this is the top 6 countries or whatever. Kind of like that. Top countries. Okay, top countries. All right, so we need to do a dashboard. Okay, so I'm going to call this a dashboard. Okay, we're really close to having a workable dashboard, so I'm going to put it at the very beginning. We're going to make a dashboard. We're going to make it where it's kind of goof-proof, where somebody can kind of just see what's going on. So let's highlight, let's do the view, and let's get rid of the grid lines. All right, I've got 3 graphs. I've got one that says aftertaste by country, because we think that's maybe an important factor on trying to find good quality coffee. We're going to make this, make it smaller. If we have 5, maybe we can put 3 across and then 2 down below or whatever. So there's aftertaste by country. And this is aftertaste by processing method. So does the processing method matter? So we copy and we paste over here. And it is a large one here, so we can put it up here. Now, we might want to have it where they're similar sized. We certainly could do that, or we can put them where they're, very easy to understand what's going on each one of these. Okay, that might look good. You might want to put it here. So, whoops. So you could put it down below maybe. So you have your care about the aftertaste. So you have by country or by processing method, certainly, and you can do that, and you can make this where the letters maybe a little bit smaller, where you can get those in, because now this is a smaller thing here. All right, we have one more top 6 countries, and our top 6 countries here. And it's huge, so let's make that smaller. Let's move it around. So here we have a simple little dashboard. Here's our top countries. We have aftertaste by country and aftertaste by processing method. We could do this by method, maybe, by processing. Make this slightly smaller so maybe we can read it. One thing you want to do is you'd want to do 5, because I think 5 will show 5 features: the top countries, the top producers, the best aftertaste, the best aroma, or whatever. You can keep doing it that way, however you want to do it. There's all sorts of questions you can ask. But let's do slicers. So if we click on the data set, on one of the charts, you can go to Pivot Chart Analyze, and you see it right here. It has Insert Slicer. Okay, so here's what we need to do. We need to pick what slicer we want to have. And I'm going to pick species, which is the one that is Arabica and Robusta. So we can just put right there, we can put the species. Now, while we're selecting this, you can put report connections. And we want to make sure that if we have 3 charts on the very front, we select all 3. If we have 5, we select all 5. So here's what happens. So we want to know just Arabica. If we look just at Arabica, things have changed a little bit. If we look at Robusta, then things change a lot. Remember, a lot of ours are Arabica, and a Robusta is just a small factor. So what are our big countries? Well, our big countries are India and Uganda has the best taste quality, aftertaste quality on this sample set. All right, we have the species, Arabica and Robusta. Let's add another slicer for by the processing method. Okay, so let's do Pivot Chart Analyze, and we need to insert a slicer, and we'll do it by processing method. In the processing method, we can take the chart off here, and we want to make sure that our report connections are for pivot tables, all the pivot table 1 here, all the different sheets. So okay, so if we look at pulp or natural honey, we know that's going to be the largest. We can look at natural and dry and semi-washed and semi-pulped. and we can see what countries we want. So what we can do is we can do a dashboard with pivot charts and then slicers, and we can see how this works. Now, you might say, well, I want to change what my slicers look like. Well, I certainly can do that here. I just went with a standard, the blue, but you could certainly do it with a green, and you could go back and do this with a green. You can modify that, what the colors look like, and all sorts of things. So here's what we have. We want Arabica beans, and we want it to be pulped natural honey. Then we need to go to Brazil and Costa Rica and find those. If we care about maybe other ones like washed or wet, or natural or dry, we can certainly do that. And you say, okay, I don't want washed or wet. I want either natural or dry. And I want pulped, natural, or honey. Then we can go in that direction. So this is how you set up a pivot tables, pivot charts, slicers with a dashboard. Hey, thanks for watching. We'll see you on the next video.